We're going to complete this section by looking at the sources of error that might involve from the different types of sampling from observational studies, those different types of samplings. There's two main types of errors that can occur from sampling to represent the population. One of them that's not controllable is called a sampling error. And a sampling error is really the difference between the observed value and the actual value. And generally, this is not a controllable error. Now, let me give you a basic example of this. Let's say for some reason, I take 5 numbers. Let's just say, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's just say for some reason, I'm going to use a cluster sample, and I'm going to group 2 of them, and I'm going to group 4 and 5, and I'm going to cluster 4 and 5. So this is my population. And maybe my sample might be 4 and 5 from that, right? Now, if I wanted to take the population average, and remember earlier we called that a parameter, okay? The population average of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. And we know that the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 is going to end up being 15. All right, so that's 3 and 3 and 4 and 5 is going to be 15. And then the average is going to be 15 divided by 5, which is 3. All right, so right here, this is the actual average. Okay, so this is the population average, which is 3. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to make it really big so there's no discrepancy. However, the sample average, remember that's called a statistic. Trying to apply some of these terms would be 4 plus 5, which is 9. And then 9 divided by 2, because there's 2 observations, would be 4.5. All right, now, we did all the computations correctly. Unfortunately, the sample does not reflect the population exactly. All right, so there's a difference. Okay, there's an error of 1.5. And to get that, that would be 4.5 minus 3. All right. Does that mean we did anything wrong? No. All right. It's not a controllable error. It just happened. All right. Maybe we didn't get enough observations. Maybe we didn't randomize our population or samples enough, whatever it might be. All right. But that's what we call a sampling error, is that you just take an average of the population and you take an average of the sample, and they're different. It's nothing that we did wrong. All right. Now, the other type is something that we can control. Right? And be careful with your definitions here. This one's called a non-sampling error. All right, so it's really easy to get these confused. A non-sampling error is essentially a result of collecting, computing, or recording. It's essentially due to the sampling process that we did. All right, so it's something that we did wrong. And so just some examples of some sort of sampling errors. Sometimes if we try to do a survey, not everybody responds to it. In other words, most of the time, only motivated sorts of people or people that feel passionate about the survey or the topic are going to be the ones that reply. But there's going to be a number of people that have an opinion or a feeling and that have a response that don't necessarily go through and fill out the survey because they're apathetic, or they really don't care all that much about the topic. And so usually that's a non-participant sort of error or non-response error. Just people just don't participate and you don't get the true representation of the demographic. There's this thing called interviewer variation. All right, so the person that's actually asking the questions might have a better or a worse sort of response from each person to person. And it just depends maybe on their age, or it might involve their gender or something of that nature. As an example, let's say I go up to you and I say, how often do you skip class? and you might be hesitant to answer that question. But if another peer asks you, how often do you skip class, you're probably not too hesitant to answer the question. All right. So again, interviewer variation, you might get a different response based on who's actually asking the question. All right. So people are going to fabricate a little bit. And that's this next one as well. That kind of couples in with this interviewer variation, this misrepresented answers. Generally, sometimes people are going to tell you what they think you want to know to kind of avoid a conflict or to get on the good side of that person that's trying to ask the question. And so, for instance, maybe one of your friends or parents asks you, how many hours a week do you engage in political edification? So, in other words, how many hours a week do you sit there and watch CNN or read the newspaper about politics, etc.? And maybe you're the type of person that doesn't necessarily care about politics. But you don't want to get in an argument because politics is a sensitive subject. And so what you might say is about three, sometimes three, at least three, something of that nature, when in fact you really don't follow politics whatsoever. All right. So, and this can happen in the surveying process as well. Another type of result of errors could recur when the question might actually suggest a specific response. So in other words, you're trying to get a specific response, so you word a question in that response or in that context. So for example, maybe somebody goes out and they ask the question, and they preface it with, since Coca-Cola is the leading soft drink manufacturer in the United States, list your favorite soft drinks in order. And you might be the type of person where you don't even drink soft drinks, maybe you only drink water or something like that. But maybe there's this leading sort of antecedent that goes on with this, or precedent, excuse me. And essentially what we're doing is we're basically answering the question predicated upon what is asked. So maybe if this first part was omitted, list your favorite soft drinks in order, then you might say something to the effect of Mountain Dew, Dr. Pibb, Diet Pepsi, whatever it might be. All right, you might not even like Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola products. All right, so again, these are types of non-sampling errors that might occur. And of course, the other one that could occur is you just do a computation error. Okay, maybe you say like 4 plus 5 equals 45. All right, and clearly that's not correct. Okay, so that's just a computation error. All right, so that could occur. Again, that's a type of non-sampling error due to computation. All right, so be wary, these do occur. In general, non-sampling errors are a little more dangerous because they don't truly represent the population. So it's our job to really mitigate or try to eliminate as much as possible non-sampling errors, and just kind of go on the fact that sampling errors are going to occur. All right, it's just that how much do they occur? All right, so the whole process, or the hope is to omit as many of these as possible. Right. So that concludes our overview of some of the definitions, the sampling methods, the errors that are involved with sampling. In the next section, what we're going to start to do is we're going to start to do that next component to where we've collected data. Now, what do we do with the data?